music came into my life, obviously through my parents initially. Um, Both my parents were in the music business. When they met, they worked for a record store slash label kind of thing in North Jersey. Um, so early on, obviously, they would play records for me, and it was a big part of our life from day one for all the kids. Rock and roll, I think, really came into play. I mean, you could argue first time you hear Kiss, you know what I mean? But I think that rock and roll was just something that is in your nature. Some people won't say that. Some people will say you're just a product of your environment or how you're brought up. But I do think that there's that certain element in other people where, you can't force it and you can't imitate it. I think that you're kind of just born with it in a way. And it was just always an attractive lifestyle to me, whether it was the freedom or the rebelliousness or the idea of being something bigger and louder. And I think that appealed to me because I was so shy and because I was so timid. Music was an outlet, and rock and roll was like everything that I wanted to be and felt like I wasn't confident enough to be in the beginning.
I write songs to fight and to fuck too. If you wanna fight, then I'll fight you. If you wanna fuck, I will fuck you. Make up your mind, I'll make it up.
We could be here all day if we're talking influences. I love every type of music. Early influences, I mean, the first records that I remember my parents playing for me, Led Zeppelin, Rush, Pink Floyd. Trying to think of a few more. I wrote a couple down before so I wouldn't forget. Maiden, Iron Maiden, Van Halen. My dad used to play my Uncle Danny's bands for me, like Talon Storm, Dresden Black, Sprawl. So that was cool, that we had a family friend that's basically like family who had bands, rock and roll bands. So those were early influences. Since then, I literally had to write some notes here. I'll read them for you because there's so many and so many different types of music that it would be impossible for me to just sit here and just like ramble them off to you. So I off the top of my head, I wrote a couple down because I had a feeling you would ask me influences. So, I mean, I grew up on rock and roll, classic rock and roll, any type of rock and roll. That's where my parents came from. But then, as I got a little older, I met my first guitar player, really, Gabe, and he showed me the whole different world of punk rock and things like that I never knew about. So I just wrote down some from every era of my life in a way, you know what I mean? From being in middle school and being into that whole, like, whatever you want to call it, neo-goth rock scene, like Atreyu and 18 Visions and bands like that, heavier stuff. And then when he introduced punk to me, there was The Clash, there was Sex Pistols, there was Joy Division, The Fall, Rancid, obviously, when you're young, The Unseen, Ramones, Stooges, MC5, Blondie, David Bowie. High school was a weird mix because I had just been introduced to all that stuff, but I was also listening to, I always liked heavy stuff. I always liked stuff that had a little bit more balls to it. And, I grew up on metal and I grew up on rock, hard rock. So, you started finding the new versions of that. You find the Lamb of Gods and you find when you're a kid, you're pissed off and you're angry. You want the punk that's the most punk, and you want the metal that's the most metal, and you just find heavier stuff and heavier stuff. But I liked some of the 90s into 2000s stuff, like Rob Zombie and Marilyn Manson and Saliva and bands like that a lot of people thought were corny, but I dug it. I had a friend, Jesse, and his older brother, Alex, used to cruise us around, and we used to listen to Typo Negative. So, I mean, all over the scale. I mean, from everywhere, from classical music to rock to psych rock to metal, punk. I mean, everything influenced me at some point. I wrote down here second wave of punk for me, which was like when I started finding bands on my own, not just the ones that my friends introduced me to. And that was like Exploding Hearts, New York Dolls, the Dead Boys were huge for me, Johnny Thunders. Obviously, there was a point in my life where the UK bands coming out were like a new version of hardcore punk, and we really took to that, which was like Gallows, Ghost of a Thousand, and Black Hole. Those are all big. The Bronx from LA. And then I got back to my roots, and my big influences were glam and sleaze and things that met somewhere in the middle of those two worlds, where you had a little bit of a punk edge and a punk style, but you had heavier riffs and a little bit more substance. Motley Crue, LA Guns, Cinderella, early Alice in Chains, Dokken, Rat, a couple Crash Diet records, Ozzy, 6am, Pantera. I'm all over the place. I just love music and I love rock and roll. So everything has influenced me at some point or another. There's bands I think that changed the game for me, more than others. But I mean, if it's real and it's rock and roll, I dig it.
If you're the last on earth, feel like you're damned or cursed. You have come to the right place. And if you have lost yourself, you can escape the hell. You have come to the right place.
I guess. Well, I always used to say this to people. Obviously, I embrace being a writer more than anything else, and I used to say that if people leave my show, whether it's with my band or whether it's solo or whether it's just me playing an open mic, if somebody leaves that place and that show thinking, I've been there, I've been through that, I can relate to that, or I want to be a part of that, then I feel like I've done my job as a communicator. So I'd say that my ultimate goal as an artist in life is to be a communicator, is to be somebody that gives refuge to people that need it, or just people that are looking for a friend. I mean, music for me has been my best friend my whole life, and if it wasn't for music and lyrics and songs that I connected with, God knows where I'd be, So I think I always wanted to express something that was real and genuine and brutally honest, and do it in a way where it's also attractive and entertaining. I wanted to do something that was my idea of being artistic is having a big look and having a big sound and embracing things that David Bowie did and Nikki Sixx did and Johnny Thunders did and Marilyn Manson did, and put it all together, but do it in a way that's strip the ego from it and have it be more more humble and a little bit more real and genuine, in that sense.
I am the world's forgotten boy, the one who searches and destroys.
I think keeping rock and roll alive is just a given when we're talking about missions or goals or aspirations. I think that if I die tomorrow and say that I played my part in trying to keep rock and roll genuine and real and maybe even a little dangerous, I think that I'd be happy. I'd be okay with that. I want to be able to say that I did my part. And so, yeah, I mean, that's definitely a big part of it. It's part of my role, I think, in life, and something that just drew me to it. And I was drawn to rock and roll and vice versa, I think that it's just something that was in my blood. So a big part of it is trying to keep rock and roll alive, and not just keep it alive. Nobody wants to just exist, and I don't want rock and roll to just exist. I don't want it to just be history books for kids. You know what I mean? I want it to be, I want to find a way to make rock and roll appeal to the generations coming up. You know what I mean? I don't want it to just be their parents' records that every now and then they find a song they like. You know what I mean? I want it to be something again where people want to see live bands. They want to see a band that looks like a band. They want to see, live performances where they're playing instruments and not an iPod. And I think that right now that's a difficult task. And there's some pioneers out there. There's some soldiers out there in rock and roll that are doing it. A couple I named previously. That they're kind of paving the way. And I think that anybody out there that is a real rock and roll band, I think you got to take their lead and you got to get yourself out there and just do anything you can to kind of join forces. And that's something I wish I saw more of, because that is part of my mission. And I wish that more people would say, hey, you play rock and roll, I play rock and roll. It may not be exactly the same type, but it's similar enough and it's real, and real recognizes real. You know what I mean? And I wish that people would start to do things like splits or tours together or so and so. It seems like we have kind of little groups of real rock and roll bands spread out. There's a couple in New Jersey, there's a couple in New York, there's a few in Atlanta, there's some in Nashville, there's some in Austin, there's some in LA, there's probably a couple in England and Japan. But it's just like, how do we network with each other to bring it back into, maybe not the mainstream, but back into enough airwaves where it's like people can really grasp onto it again and it can really start to catch on and bring back a time where, I don't know, it was just more fun and it was more real. And there was just, I always look back to the 70s and 80s because I wasn't around for it. And I think that right now would be a great time in history to have something similar to that happen again.
Now I'm a superstar in the making. I ain't fucking around and there ain't no mistaking. I never asked for something worth the taking. 'Cause I'm a superstar, baby.
If the world was ending tomorrow, what would I be doing tonight? And with what two celebrities? That's the question, right? Yeah. Wow. Probably some rated R shit. No. I think if the world,
Just say it, I don't care.
if the world was ending tomorrow, honestly, I'd probably, and I can choose any celebrity.
Yeah, go ahead.
Like I have their phone number for whatever reason, and the world's ending tomorrow.
Just whatever.
All right. Only reason I'm going to say these two celebrities is because I know they're good friends, and I bet you they're a fucking hell of a time to hang out with. Marilyn Manson and Johnny Depp. They're really good friends, and they're both just crazy and unique, and Manson being a big influence of mine, and Johnny Depp always playing kind of oddball roles. Yeah, I would hang out with Manson and Depp if the world was ending tomorrow, and I would probably be doing a lot of shit I shouldn't be doing. I don't know. Yeah, crashing cars, doing drugs, cranking rock and roll, and hanging out with Marilyn Manson and Johnny Depp and whatever the fuck they want to do. I'll leave it to them.
Cool.
So, yeah, that's that. I'm Jay Monday. I play in a band called Dirty. We're from, central New Jersey, playing out of like the Brighton Bar in West End, that kind of scene that's been around, in the Asbury Park scene, obviously. And we're looking to, branch out into New York and Philly and anywhere that you'll have us. We really just want to bring rock and roll back around in a real way, And yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you learned some things about me, and who knows, maybe we'll kick it and have a drink someday. Thanks for tuning in, and coming up, I think I'm going to play a couple songs for you guys, I believe, right? Is that what we're doing? Yeah, okay, great. So we'll see you soon. hanging around the bottom again. 10 years got behind, watching music pave its way. I'm praying I'll get my time, as lonely as the nights get, as empty as the bottles flow. Baby, just take my hand, we're playing a rock and roll band. Oh yeah. Now just keep on singing, darling, by your side. Keep on working and slinging, yeah, the only way to survive. We'll be train wreck lovers, lovers in the night. Yeah, we'll be train wreck lovers in the night. We'll be cause I've been around too long time, holding on to a name, trying to write you the one song that gives you all a place to stay. So find a home in this verse and sing it a million times. Oh yeah, oh yeah. And now just keep on singing, darling, by your side. Keep on working and slinging, you're the only way to survive. We'll be train wreck lovers, lovers in the night. You will be train wreck lovers in the night. We'll be train wreck lovers, lovers in the night. We'll be little out of tune, but cheers.